Your goal is to transform healthcare from a sick care model to a preventative one using holistic modalities. I love that a lot about your approach. How do you envision this transformation, and what specific changes do you believe are necessary to achieve this in hospitals and healthcare organizations?
Thank you, Ella, for the question. Yes, we've seen a lot of the sick care model in our current healthcare system, in that there's a lot of, quick procedure, quick, um, band-aiding with medication. There's not a lot of what do we do about the lasting transformative health that people are really desiring and looking for. And honestly, as a nurse, I believe it starts with us. It starts with being the example of a how do I get through life. Um, it's a fast pace. Um, Relationships are key, and it's the part that heals, and that nurse patient relationship is that. Um, so we have a not only a responsibility, but a highly influential place in those little moments that we have, where we can really sit one-to-one with those patients and show them, you know, how it can be different. And it really starts with getting into that intrinsic motivation, that what lights you up, what gets you out of bed in the morning. And sometimes those little questions, or even just where do you want to be by the end of the shift together? Even really involving them, it gives them that personal responsibility for their own care. So I really believe it does start with us as the provider. If we are happy, healthy, well in all areas of our life, practicing it every day, we're going to be able to inspire and show others how to do that for them as well.
I can imagine, and from what I have heard, that the situation for nurses, particularly now after COVID, is very difficult, and there is understaffing and all that, what is going on. Can you give us a picture about what your life as a nurse looks like right now after COVID, and why you are so passionate about transforming that into a different system?
It's a heavy responsibility that we come with, from nursing school, and then throughout our career. There's a drive to, we have to do everything perfect. There's in the Western world, too, it's always a make sure that we are doing everything by the books and appropriate for every single patient every single time, so that there's avoiding lawsuits, you know, check boxes, insurance regulations, right? All of those things really have kind of, I've seen grow over my 14 years, to where the nurse has been taken away and put more into task oriented and away from that relationship part of why we went to nursing school in the first place. And that's led to frustration. It's led to burnout. It's led to lack of fulfillment in that nurse. And then the question becomes, internally, like, this doesn't feel right. Something's wrong. Something's off. This doesn't feel like true healing. We're doing a lot of band-aiding. We're doing a lot of surfacey, just in the fast pacedness too. Um, and I think that's really led to that exiting of the bedside, and COVID just really highlighted what was already happening, but it just kind of put it over the edge. So these nurses are asking themselves, is this worth it? And I was one of them that asked that question too. And I think that's partly why I always was driven to that more holistic model, because it's one thing affects another. You can't only treat the heart without affecting the lungs or the liver or the brain, and just having that basic understanding as a nurse how your body functions. It doesn't make sense that we would separate mental health from physical health and emotional health. And, even now with, science proving some of that gut brain, um, connection, I'm a believer too that, your mental state and your emotional state has the same physical effects. So we have to do better.
I do agree. It was quite surprising for me coming from Asia, then going to Germany and lived there most of my life. I saw how separated those areas of health were. Like you had your general doctor, then if they discover something, they send you to another specialist, right? And that specialist will only focus on that area, which was always kind of weird for me. Like, how can you look at only one separated area and not look at the other areas that might be causing that kind of problem? And he will never find that problem because he's only here, like he's never looking here. And so coming from a more Asian health perspective and holistic health perspective, it was kind of always weird for me. I felt always like I don't want to have to do anything with Western doctors because that feels so wrong. And anytime I tried to be healed by a Western doctor, it never worked out. Like I had to find my own ways of incorporating, again, holistic health systems to help myself. And I can imagine that by you attempting to even trying to incorporate that into your field with nurses, even who are working in the traditional Western medicine field, you meet a lot of misconceptions about the holistic approach.
Yes, yes, there are, and I think some of that. I think now it's people are a little bit more open to that. In that, the experience with the Western model has, now that they've experienced it, they can see how it's not the total package. There is something more, and your body's designed to work with nature. And so I think there is a willingness now, that patients are a little bit more searching those holistic modalities out. So I really feel like it is the right time, not only for professional organizations, healthcare staff, but patients, I think, are ready for that paradigm shift. They're ready for that change to, kind of in some sense return to basics. Um, good nutrition, good water, good sleep, fulfilling relationships, working in their purpose, their passion, knowing that, having those deep conversations with people. Um, so part of that generational misconception, I think, too, with some of the more elderly, where it was a lot of mindset of, yep, we do whatever the doctor says. Whatever the doctor says is the truth. And anything else, no. But I do see now with that younger generation, grandchildren, that they're being a little bit more open to that and having that experience in our Western model, that there's something missing. And I think the evidence of that too is people are more willing to pay out of pocket, outside of the insurance will or won't cover this, they'll still seek it out and still pay out of pocket for it. So I think it's a demand that we do have to shift and change as healthcare providers.
I fully agree, and I'm really glad to see that it has spread across the world. Basically, the attempt to open up that space to more holistic approaches and a field that I know is being fought against by the Western medicine field and agenda, if you will. So, in your experience, what are the key aspects of holistic health that you find lacking or underrepresented in the Western standard medical model?
There are some of those holistic, like nutrition. We have dietitians, but again, that comes with being regulated just like the nursing profession, just like every other profession is regulated. We have to meet certain standards. Um, so there's room for improvement across the board. Um, while there is some of that integration, I think it's really the key, and this is why I love coaching so much, is it gets to the root, right, of why do we do what we do? Why do we make the decisions that we do? What are the viewpoints that we carry that are helping or causing us, to come up against a barrier? Um, and in our Western culture, it's so busy. We have to be here and there, and there's not the time to sit. A patient will come and see a physician and have a 15-minute appointment. Well, how's your med? How's it working? Let's adjust something. But where's the lifestyle coaching? 80% of our chronic illnesses, cardiac disease, all these top killers are mental, emotional, physical health, and it's lifestyle. And so I think that's the big lacking, is that relationship, that partnership that it was meant to be as a provider and patient. It's turned into a almost like a parent relationship. Like, okay, this is what we're going to do. But if it never comes from the patient and their idea, it's not going to be successful. And I think that that's played out, and there's hopelessness that comes with chronic illness. Things will never change, but you know, I really believe that that coaching relationship really just empowers people to understand themselves, listen to their intuition, and be guided by their intrinsic their knowing. So yeah, I think that is a big missing piece to our being successful.
I fully agree with you that the relationship between the caregiver and the patient is completely lost, as if it was not important at all. When a patient comes in, it is just, it feels like a machinery almost, that they want to get as many people through that line as possible, because I assume they get paid based on how many patients they get through the door, right? And the most sad thing I feel is that in the Western medical culture, a doctor gets paid if a patient is sick, while in the traditional Chinese medicine culture, so to speak, a doctor only got paid when the patient was healthy. So when the doctor was able to keep that patient healthy. And this is a big contradiction between these two systems. And I personally prefer this one, like where the doctor is really dedicated and is really sold on the idea to keep me healthy, but truly healthy, not just band-aid, as you said, with all the symptoms that I have. I don't care about my symptoms. I can bear a lot of pain. Like we mothers, we know how much pain we can bear, right? It's not the problem to the pain, right? The problem is, when you really think about it, when you get sick, the real problem is that you remain sick for the rest of your life if you don't take care of the root cause. And what the holistic approach does is really go into the root cause of everything. And as you mentioned, the root cause of everything is very basic and very simple, that you basically cannot really earn money on, not a ton of money, right? Like the Western system tries to do with all the technology advancements, all the equipment that they buy to scan you from top to bottom, right? That is oftentimes not even necessary to really get to the bottom or the root cause of many of our illnesses, right? And when we kind of compare these two systems, I can almost feel and predict that on a daily basis you meet a lot of conflict between those two. Do you have examples for us from your daily experience where you see the Western medicine dealing with the problem in this way, but you would love to deal with it in this way?
Yes. Oh, I love that question. I will take something like you said, kind of I'll take a quick example. We'll just take Anxiety, for example, a medical diagnosis, anxiety, you meet certain criteria and you have anxiety. Well, thinking about life, every person experiences anxiety. It's a normal human response, human emotion. But your circumstances, how you're coping, what your resources are, depends on how quickly and how you let anxiety control your life. So while the Western model may say, oh, you have anxiety, my solution, here's an anxiety medication, right? But why are you anxious? There is a reason. Either stress is involved. Usually stress and anxiety go hand in hand. So while the holistic model can be, let's work together to find, why are you anxious? Is it, I can't pay my bills and I have mouths to feed? Okay, what resources do we need? How can we help there? Or I can give you a pill, but I'm never addressing. And specifically with a diagnosis too, what I've seen is there's a tendency when somebody says, oh, you have depression or you have anxiety, that person identifies with that. Oh, this is why I am the way that I am. It's because I have this. Now, all of a sudden, you're taking personal responsibility away and putting it on the healthcare system, on the physician. You got to make me well because diagnose me with this. So if an individual, you know, attaches themselves to that identity, all of a sudden they become that too. And there is that vicious cycle of not being able to ever recover, and then you're on anxiety medication forever. So that's just one example. That's a layer. We need to be going a layer deeper and really finding out why and how can we help this person through that, and not giving them a label or identity that then they shift and follow through, and then there's that responsibility then gets shifted.
Yes, I fully agree. And it feels like when you label people that it is the end station, the last station for them, that sickness, right? Anxiety, depression, cancer. This is the last, there's no other way out, right? There's no resort. You don't get any suggestions on what to do besides swallowing a pill, right? At least for the US, that's very prevalent in that part of the world. In other countries, they try to do other things as well, but the majority of Western medicine tries to always divert to an external solution to solve an internal problem, oftentimes, right? And it is the end station. What I hate the most about that people are left on that dark and lonely end station, right? There's no train coming for you. And why it is so, why I hate it so much is because thinking about my grandma right now, for example, who is very, very sick. She's very old, she's over 90, but nevertheless, she has to swallow, I don't know how many pills, 10 to 20 pills a day for all the sicknesses that she has. And it makes me so sad because I know in my heart and my whole being that she could have lived another 10 to 20 years if anybody told her the right ways how to take care of herself, how to treat her illnesses. It is not the last station that she had knee problems. It is not the last station of arthritis or a heart, even heart diseases, right? None of those are end stations for almost no one from all the knowledge that I have gathered because of it, right? It is almost never the end station. And I want people like you to be beacons of hope for people, that there is a way, that this is not the last resort for you to remain inside of that label and box. There is a way out. There is a way out into full healing, right? Like we can see for many patients who have cancer, for example, and I've read really cruel studies about that, where they made studies about it. One group got the result of having cancer, and nothing else was added to that information. And those patients died earlier than those who had the information that they had cancer, but there was a solution. It didn't really matter what kind of solution, but the mere hope and the addition of having a resort, having a way out, helped them to live longer or even heal completely from cancer. And of course, there are different types of cancers. We cannot throw everything into one box, but in my personal conviction, for most cancer types, you can heal. There are ways. It's not the end station, and certainly not chemotherapy. And I know I will get hate, maybe even get banned with this video, or maybe this video will be taken down. I don't know what will happen, but my conviction is that chemotherapy is almost for nobody, right? There are better ways.
Absolutely. Yes. And there are better ways. And I think that comes from too, not having fear of saying what's true. And I think that that's been some of the block that we've had in our healthcare models because, right, you mentioned the possibility of getting banned, or, oh, you're not practicing physician under your, governing body. So again, there's no money in wellness, right? Um, so there is that, I think, underlying, and I've experienced that personally, just kind of being more holistically minded, like, okay, if I say this, to this patient right now that goes against what the doctor said, there's fear of, why did you say this to my patient? And a whole uproar of stuff. So I think that there needs to be more truth, and we have a long way to go to be able to shift an environment that we can speak the truth without that reprimand, right? So yes, I've personally experienced, I think part of during the COVID stuff too, of, hey, I don't know if this is a good idea, but at the same time, have a duty to the patient. But how do you balance that, right?
Yeah. What I find beautiful is that you are building a team of nurse coaches to really address the burnout and staffing crisis within hospitals. And what are the key strategies or methodologies that you employ to instigate this transformation internally, and how do you measure that type of success in this endeavor?
I think for me, it started just acknowledging what's true. What's true is, here's our environment. What's true is, a lot of nurses have felt that the only way to be fulfilled professionally is to escape the environment. And that's kind of what I was doing too. Before pursuing coaching, I was like, oh, this is my way out. And along that journey, I was like, well, I'm escaping because of the lack of fulfillment, the environment, and no one's coming to save us as profession or professionals or nurses. And we're there every day in the trenches. We know what we need, but there's been a disempowerment. And that's why I find, hey, if I could pour into one nurse at a time, like I was poured into, and found my passion, found a new purpose, and wait, guys, no one's coming to save us. We can do this together. Um, but it's going to take individual work. We have to acknowledge everything that we've been through. We have to acknowledge what's true and what's not true, what's perception, what are we doing, working on fear. That there's a big one, the fear of harm, um, that a lot of new nurses will, come out of nursing school with, especially post COVID, and not having kind of that full clinical experience that I did, 14 years ago. So there's a lot more fear and anxiety coming into that environment. But when you're able to, you know, physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, relationally, professionally look at and support nurses one to one. And that's the space that I've been doing over the last year, is really pouring into them, and they get an empowerment that then they show up to work differently. And then the team, there starts to be that light there, and that you get that ripple effect. And that in turn then spreads to those patient interactions. And they, are really doing the work. And that's inspiring, and it's showing somebody by leading by example. And that's my hope, to really transform it. And you mentioned that, hopelessness. Well, we're able to provide hope to our nurses again too. We don't need to stay burned out. We can do something about it. But it's going to take a hard look at yourself and why you're doing what you're doing and what matters to you, and what are you willing to do to get that restoration, to do what's right, not only for you and your team, but your patients that we serve.
To what degree would you say is it possible at all for a nurse that oftentimes has to work night shifts and many hours beyond her work hours, right? How much of that, including your support and your work and building that relationship to enhance their self-care level, if you will, how much can that be really included into the daily work?
The nurses that I've worked with, it's a simple example. Self-care is, we are wonderful at caring for others, but we almost forgot how to do and part of it's been a cultural thing, bedside nurse, like, oh, I haven't eaten in, you know, 15 hours, or, oh, I haven't gone to the bathroom one time. And really getting their shifting in that mindset to not like a badge of honor, but like hey, how can we look at this as a disservice to your patient or a safety issue? And I give this example with them too, is we've all been there as nurses, myself included, of, I haven't used the bathroom maybe in 8+ hours and I really have to go. But I'm in the room with the patient and they're talking to me and they're trying to maybe tell me something important about their care. But now my brain is split between my own physical need and trying to hear my patient. Could I potentially miss something important, valuable, that I need to report to the doctor? But I did not take care of my own needs. So now I'm not able to give my full attention, and there is a potential that I could miss something important. So really working with them and shifting the way that they are thinking about their self-care, the way that they think about it. And how does that, your decision where you might be self-sacrificing, but how does that actually affect your patient in the long run and how you're caring for them? It's putting your own oxygen mask on first, and not feeling the guilt, because there's a lot of that in the culture too, of bedside, like, oh, I feel guilty leaving my coworkers to watch my patients, or I want to get what my patient asked me to do now, instead of tell them, oh, I'm going to be taking a break. Like, they see their patient as that more important than themselves sometimes, which that can be as a detriment. And so that's just one example of where we need to do better as professionals, and see it as a way that we are serving our patients better by being well ourselves.
And I noticed this is very prevalent for women, that we tend to do more than we should, right? That we want to serve until we completely burn out because I don't know who, told us that that was a badge of honor, right? Even in the when you take parents, for example, when you are a mother to your kids, it's the same thing, right? Like you are the nurse to your patients. When you actually don't take care of yourself, you do a huge disservice to your children, because how are you going to show up if you don't have enough sleep? Like, how much more likely are you going to not have control over your emotions when something goes wrong, which it does 100 times a day when the kids are small, especially, right? So, how you actually take care of yourself to an extent that you can serve better, not take care of yourself so you don't have to do the job. Like, it can have like both directions, right? Are you kind of, do you take the lazy route and that's why you excuse yourself with self-care strategies and things that you want to do during your day to not do your parenting job? Or do you take self-care seriously because you want to serve your kids on the highest levels? And that would be kind of the same thing. If you feel like you will be called a lazy nurse or a lazy mom, if that's your main fear, then you will step away from self-care completely, and you will completely wear yourself off and burn out because you don't want to be called that. But I feel like if you catch yourself that you are scared of that, most probably you're not lazy. So it's time to stop thinking about that and start implementing some self care, some serious self care that goes beyond just making your hair and your nails, to really nourish your soul, your body, just about everything about you, to be a better nurse, to really inspire healing in your patient, right? But also inspire healing in your kids, because they are hurting also here and then, and even if it's on an emotional level, right? We constantly have to be nurses, I feel, as women. And I absolutely am an advocate of what you're saying, that we need to step away from that mindset of, oh, it's really great and amazing if I don't sleep and I still get everything done, or the badge of honor that you sometimes see people put on other women who are single moms. Oh, she's that powerful superwoman who gets done everything and all by herself. Well, maybe she has to. Maybe that's the detriment to her soul, right? Having to do everything by herself. There's nothing honorable about being a single mom, if I may say so, because I am one, right? It's the same thing. Like, people need to have a differentiated view on that. And I feel self care is widely misunderstood. And we need to talk about it, what it actually means, especially if we are in the realm of holistic health. Right? What does it actually mean? What do you inspire your nurses to do for self care?
Over the years, the longer you're a nurse, there is a lot that comes at us. You get it from doctors, other, you know, PT, OT, lab, you name it, administration, families, patients, to where there's times that we are never good enough. We can never be perfect enough. We can never, and that, what that does to your soul and your psyche after a while of, sometimes physical abuse. I've had nurses get choked by patients, and what does that do? And oh, it was because they're confused, or, oh, we excuse these things away, where if something like this happened outside the four walls, it's a completely different story, right? Um, but it's what we've accepted, and there has to be that mental shift to, what do we allow, the treatment of ourselves. And it's not only a physical job, it's a mental job, it's an emotional job, it's a spiritual job, it's relationships, it's it is holistic. Nursing is holistic at its core. And so that's the way I approach it. Nurses understand that intrinsically, like we understand holistic, but how do we practice that ourselves? And that might look like with my mental health. I need to look at the way that I think about things. What's okay, what's not okay. What have I allowed that I just didn't feel like I had the voice to say, how that really felt. And how those experiences then transfer over, like you mentioned, to, I'm a mom of two little ones too. Um, how I treated them when they were little, when I'm taking care of people all day, and then I come home and I'm still mom, and not to really beat yourself up for that period of time, but how important it is self-care, how um, strength and honor comes from how do you care for yourself physically, and knowing that it's also emotional, knowing that it's also your mental health, and there's nothing wrong with needing support there. Spiritually, what do you do there? There was a point in my life that I was like, oh my gosh, I have totally neglected that side of me, and that ended up being a completely unbalanced life then. But when I chose to acknowledge that and bring that forth, that's when all of this changed, right, for me. um but again, it's not leaving out one part. So really encouraging those staff members, those nurses, to look at their lives holistically. What you do here at work, we can pretend that we can separate work from home. No, we can't. No, we don't. And I like to use the fun, simple example of like, tell me how you clean your house then, because I guarantee you have multiple projects going on at once, because that's your pattern, your behavior, how you run your shift, right? You're always here and there and everywhere, juggling multiple things at multiple times. That's how we clean our houses. And you get the giggles because everybody knows that it's true. um, and so it's just a silly way to acknowledge, like, yes, you can't address one without the other.
And now I'm really curious, like, how did you feel motivated? What was the pivotal moment for you personally to say, I need to be a nurse? And I can imagine you were quite young when that happened.
Yeah, growing up, I've just always been so fascinated with the human body and the complexity of it. Like, oh my gosh, it's just so, like, I'm in awe of it, and then even just in nature in general too, like how everything is just so like perfected. One little tiny thing is off, it throws everything off. And I just always loved helping people. Um, and the love of that, of knowing and understanding like health and wellness and your body and how everything's deeply connected. And then with the relationship part, nursing was just, it was just a natural, like, you just know you're born for something. And I think I always knew it was nursing and going into nursing, but then experiencing it in the way that I had, and just kind of having that internal struggle with Western traditional Band-Aid and holistic. Like, there was that point of time where I was like, again, I need to escape, because this isn't how I, you know, wanted to serve people as a nurse. And coming into coaching, I was like, oh, it was like the light bulb moment. Like, this is what I was actually born to do in this way. And then it was a pursuit of, how do I do that in this space? And then it developed into, um, you know, through personal experience, saying, hey, administration, leadership, we're struggling with, burnout in the workforce, the nursing shortage crisis that we are experiencing, especially since COVID. And just knowing, like, nobody knows the mind and heart of a nurse better than another nurse. And just speaking that language and saying what's true. I have a solution to solve some of these burnout issues, and it is, we need to focus on the individual again. And so getting that support from the administration, that's how all of this was born, and all of the vision of really transforming from within, to to that holistic model. That's how it was all born.
And if you were not a nurse, is there any other profession that you feel you could do as well?
I've asked myself that question before when I considered, like, is this worth it? Would I just leave nursing? What would I do? Um, and I was like, I'm a nurse. That's just me. Prior to that, I worked in food service, restaurant, still serving people, but I couldn't do anything else. I'm just, I think the beauty of nursing is that it can grow and evolve and you can do so many different things with it. And I really found, like, that passion of, okay, if I don't want to be a bedside nurse, what's most important is that relationship. And that's where coaching is just the magic space, that healing relationship that I've always felt fulfilled by.
And I'm pretty sure that during your journey of more than a decade as a nurse, you have encountered a lot of obstacles or challenges, specifically in your job. Could you elaborate on one or two of them so I have a better picture of it?
Going back a little bit to when I first started my career, um, my stepdad was diagnosed with stage 4 colon cancer, and he passed away right when I graduated. And that was a big trigger for me too, to like go into that holistic, because I watched him go through chemo, I watched him go through all that stuff, was trained traditionally as a nurse. But in nursing school, it is a lot of holistic because we don't prescribe. Going and just having that internal conflict. Yeah, I mean, it was difficult, you know, to say there's a better way. But yet we're doing this because it's your duty, and I mentioned before of that feeling conflicted, like, okay, do I teach my patient, show them what I know to be true, but it goes against, what the physician says. There's that conflict there. I know that it can transform, it can change. And I think that's going to be like a long haul, like in it for the long haul. And I think it really does start with really just being with people, from birth to death. Every person in some way, shape, or form will experience the care of a nurse. And so we're just, we're that special breed of humans that, have those qualities to be with people in that time of need. And we also have that influence to really shift communities around us.
So it's really both that you are doing. You are, on one hand, helping the nurses to take care of themselves, to be able to serve on a better level. And at the same time, you also advocate for holistic health systems to be integrated into the Western system. And what specific things, if you had like one or three wishes granted from me and I was a fairy, what would you particularly wish for when it comes to your mission?
If I had a magic wand, really, I would love to see internally at the bedside specifically a lot of these external things that we have to do outside of direct patient care, like charting and, all these things. If we could just erase all of those things and just be able to be, one to one with patients, I think that would make a huge difference in not only the burnout, but the satisfaction, the fulfillment, and the passion that nurses have. Um, Now I know that there has to be charting, there has to be some of those things, but I think it's it's been so much more than it once was. And I think we've seen the health of our communities follow suit as that's happened, and as the more technology, like you mentioned before, more of those, cover your butt legally, and these protocols and all these things that we have to do outside of it. We've seen a shift from that relationship that really, that where a patient will feel not like a number, but valued and cared for and loved. That has more of an healing impact than anything. But we've seen it go from that to shifting into all these tasky things. And so with that's kind of come a coldness, and a uncaring. So that would be my number one, shifting back to that. So more like the roots of nursing, um, less of all the tasky things that come along with the job. A lot less coordinating. We do so much of our days coordinating at the where it's like you have like this much time with your patient and the rest of it's over here, in a shift. Um, that would be my number one. Um, the mindset shifting, and empowerment. I'd love to see that come back to nursing. Really being that if we can be really good advocates for nursing and our profession, we're going to be even better advocates for our patients. Um, and so I feel like that's one thing that has declined over the years with that shift away from more time with the patient, more of that task oriented, fear based, we have to be perfect and that, um, that would be number two magic wand. And number three, I'd love to see patients that return of ownership of their own lives and their own health, their own well-being, shifting the ownership back onto the patient. I've seen in the name of patient safety, some of that autonomy and some of those ownership being kind of transferred from the patient onto the staff and the nurse. We can't have anybody fall. So even though you might be able to independently walk, but because you meet certain criteria or certain medication that has a potential for you to, maybe get lightheaded or dizzy, somebody must be in the room with you to get out. So you're kind of take some of that independence and responsibility then away from the patient. And then you get into that, like I described before, almost parent-child relationship with grown adults. And that gets sticky because I see them follow that then childlike behavior, and then all of a sudden they can't do anything for themselves. And then again, now the healthcare staff is responsible for my health and well-being, just like we talked about, with a identity or a diagnosis. So getting that return of ownership and control. It's your life. I'll help you get where you want to go, but it's yours and nobody else is responsible but you. I think that's such a more empowered state to live in.
I wish I was a fairy because I would grant you all three wishes. Exactly what you said has been in the same way in my mind because and people might not have really paid attention. I really want people to hear this. You said that caring for a person, being there for them as a physical body that has their own energy and stuff, contributes more to healing than what the medical system does. I want all who are listening right now to really notice that. And I 100% subscribe to that, even though I'm not a nurse, I'm only a mom, which had to do a lot of nursing as well. And escaping the Western medical field completely. I have not been at a doctor with my kids almost never because I wanted to be self-sufficient in that realm. And what I can testify 100% is that your energy as a human being contributes so much to the healing of another human being that is not at a healing state. You can spark healing, you can activate their immune system by the energy that you exude. Of course, you have to help also on a physical level. It's not just the energetic field, right? You have to also nurse the physical body, right? So you have to give them things that will nurture the body on a natural level, right? Not pills, right? Returning that ownership. Man, I could preach it all day, because this is so wrong to do with a person on so many different levels, that you take away their own decision making power, their autonomy to decide what they want with their bodies done, right? And it's really cruel to do that, right? And what I feel their main idea is to just cover their behinds, so to speak, in insurances and all that stuff, so nothing happens to them, but less is being paid attention to what happens to the patient, right? So they can do whatever they want because they are covered by insurance, and whatever happens to the patient is really, doesn't really matter, right? And I've experienced multiple things where I could have sued a nurse or a doctor, or again a nurse, for doing real direct malpractice, real disservice, real harm to my body, for example. And this is a complete no-go. Like, covering yourself by insurance is understandable, but it should not excuse yourself from doing direct harm to a patient. And I think this needs to be balanced in a way where the patient interest is number one, where the autonomy of the patient and the decision-making power of the patient is number one. And what I personally see is the worst, where it happens the worst, is with mothers. So when you're pregnant, and with older people. These are the
That's
two demographics where this happens the most. So when you're pregnant, they dismiss you by assuming, oh, you're not in control, you're emotional, you're whatever, we do it for you, right? So they go ahead and they do all horrible things that I don't even know I could say on this show with you, to just do their job on paper, right? And the
Mhm.
same goes for elderly people. What is happening to older people in hospitals? How are people treating them? How are nurses and doctors treating them without their consent? Because they believe, oh, they are delusional anyway, or they have dementia, or what have you, right? Just right out dismissing people and not really serving them, not really being with them. So I really love that you want to bring that back and really bring back the caring of the patient itself, and bringing it back to the core of healing itself. Because again, you say you can only heal yourself, but another person, whether it is a nurse, a mom, a dad, they can spark the healing by having the right energy, by being a fully healed and present person, by wanting to initiate that healing process. That it has to be a will of that nurse or mom or dad to heal you on a holistic level, on a full body level.
Absolutely. I fully agree. I see it, unfortunately, every day, specifically with those two populations. And, I think that was part of, um, my own experiences with my own pregnancies. Coming from that world, I wanted nothing to do with it. So I was so determined. I'm not going to do that, I'm not going to go to the hospital. I'm going to have it outside the hospital. I'm going to, but the power of that mindset and that will was like incredible, to be like, wow, I did that all natural outside of here. But it was the not background knowledge that I had coming from that world, knowing if I go to the hospital, I'm going to have this protocol and this protocol and this and this, and I'm not going to be able to, there's more chance of things to go wrong than if I prepare well, mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually, to go at it. And it, I wouldn't trade it for the world.
And I wish I had the chance to do the same. With my firstborn, of course, I was still in the mindset, even though I was already on the holistic journey, I kind of was, based on different things that happened during pregnancy, I was made to believe that it was safer to deliver in the hospital. So I did, and I almost lost my life. So with the second one, didn't want to go into a hospital. But then again, things happened during the pregnancy that I was led to believe that it was not safe to do it outside. And what comes also additionally to it, not sure how it is in the US, but in Germany, where I was at the time, so we don't have many midwives. So when you actually want to deliver, you have to really find one. And if you don't find one in time, it is really, you have no other chance. And this is the, again, an agenda, and I will call it out. It is an agenda to eliminate midwives completely, so women have no other chance than to go into hospitals to deliver their babies, because of course
Mhm.
they earn a ton of money with you by delivering in the hospital, right? But what a midwife will do differently on so many levels is that she will actually help you deliver the baby in a healthy way. And I personally can only recommend every woman to at least think about it, that these two options exist. And the better option for most women, if you don't have major health issues where you need real doctor assistance during delivery, always better choice to the midwife. I will say it boldly because my experience with my two pregnancies was horrible, absolutely horrible. And no woman should, or mother should, go through this, right? It should never happen. And a
Mhm.
woman needs to have a choice, right? And I know in the US this is discussed very profoundly. My body, my choice. Please make a choice, but at least know what choices you have as a woman, because this time you will never get back. This
Mhm.
holy, sacred time with your baby during delivery is one of the most important moments that you will have as a mom. And when it is disrupted by a nurse, by a doctor, by procedures that are unnecessary, that are harming the baby, that are harming you, you will never get it back. And this is not
Mhm.
worth it just because you think, oh, that's the only option that I have. You have much more to choose from.
Yeah, and that's the education and the empowerment piece and the preparation that it takes to follow your instincts, really, as moms. And I think that, same thing in the US, that there is a sway away, you know, um, and it's very fear-based, and I remember going through anatomy and physiology in nursing school and just getting to my OB rotation and just all the things that could go wrong, with the pregnancy. It's like all the more awe that um what a miracle a childbirth is. Um and so I think that yes, there's a lot of fears that why people do certain procedures or steer somebody, you know, um in that direction of, well, it's safer to go to the hospital. But it's actually not. Now studies have come out and proven actually the opposite, that there's more risk and there's more adverse events that happen having birth internally in a hospital environment than outpatient, and we forget that as we're mostly well, but it does start from the beginning. It starts from, again, taking care of yourself holistically, being empowered, being in control of your own life. And if you don't know how to do that, that's where coaching comes in, right? Let's help you to do it. Let's help you have the education that you need, but the empowerment and this is your one life and you get to do what you want, but make sure that your, decisions follow your intuition, follow your passion, your purpose, your values. Make sure that it's aligned there in all those areas, mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually, right? And I think again, that's how we change and shift culture and society.
Yeah, I think the most important part is also to believe in it, believe that it's possible, and not give up until we get what
Right.
we deserve. And where can people find you to start?
Half my hours are internally in the hospital. But I have there's a nurse coach community that are like-minded nurses who have come from that world who are so passionate. And I started a private practice so that I can serve in that more free, holistic way without the barriers of an organization. So you can find me. It's I do have a Facebook page. That's my only social media. Um, and Nicole, and like my last name's pronounced Lahonen. And then email is the best way to get a hold of me if you're looking for a coach to start addressing some of these going through life with. Um, and my email is Nicole dot Lahonen 22@gmail.com. That's the best way to get a hold of me, and or Facebook Messenger too.
Of course, I will leave all the links in the description so anybody can find and get in contact with you. I could have talked with you for another 3 hours probably. So thank you so much for this beautiful conversation, for showing us your perspective, for sharing your experience. I think this is tremendously valuable that we hear those voices from inside where everything is happening, right? That we hear the truth, right? And that we talk about what's really important.
Absolutely. And you said that word truth, and that's where it starts. And we also need to be truthful with ourselves and find those like-minded individuals that can show you a better way and that can walk with you and that um didn't give up on their passion and purpose.
Yes. Thank you so much.
Thank you.